Nice picture. Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
There we go.
Hello.
Hi,
All right.
Terry. We're live already.
Oh, excellent.
We're here. So I'm Charisma Horton of Charisma's Corner, and I'm so excited. I'm in the Little Pink Barn, and I have a bunch of my friends here, and we are going to discuss quilt pattern design. So if we could go and introduce ourselves, lady Jen, you can go first.
Awesome. I'm Jen Frost with Faith in Fabric. I'm here in beautiful sunny San Diego, and at my shop, we really focus on faith-based patterns. And thank you to all of you guys who have joined in for the Women of the Bible Quilt Along. Anne, what's it like in your world?
Really hot. It's been 38 degrees Celsius this week, and I'm staying with my parents in Adelaide, and it has been stinking hot and not much air conditioning in this place either. So very unenjoyable. Anyway, I'm Anne from Said with Love, and I have an online fabric store. I'm a quilt pattern designer and a total fabricaholic. What about you, Rayleigh?
I'm another Aussie. So hello, everyone. And I'm in Canberra, and I'm a long arm quilter and have been quilting for about 16 years. So I do love that sort of step towards the end of the quilt and getting to see all the different designs that come through. I will say in probably 16 years, I have only quilted the same quilt 3 times.
Wow.
Which is,
That's
quite interesting. So yeah, they're all different. How about you, Terry?
Hi, I'm Terry from Lizard Creek Quilting. I'm a farm wife first. I help my husband with a lot of the farm wife, and then I'm a pattern designer, fabric designer. Generally, anything quilting and color, it's in my world, and I love it.
Yep,
So yeah, that's about it.
So today we're going to discuss quilt pattern design. That is such a broad subject. So we have a few areas to focus on. And my favorite thing, and probably a question that I get asked a lot, is how do you come up with so many designs? And I'll say that specifically I get asked that because I have more than 500 published designs. And so
Which is a lot.
Yes. So what inspires a design? How do we go about all of these things? And so I think the first round we'll go through and just kind of talk about some of the things that inspire us. And so for me, sometimes I'll be inspired by the fabric. That's one thing. Maybe it's a season, maybe it's whatever. But my favorite thing to do really is playing with software, right? In the old ways, before I got onto the computer, I would probably make some blocks, put them on my design board, switch them around, do all that sort of improv, add this, take this away, do this. But now with the creation of software, I don't have to have that set of blocks. So it's like my crayons as an adult where I can play. Oh, if I change this one color, or if I switch this block and turn this block, or take this element away, how does it make that pattern look? And so I have series of patterns actually, because when I've designed one and I know, oh, if I just add this or take this away or do this, then it's like sort of a spin-off of this one design. So then I'll have whole series of block or quilts that are all sort of derivative of each other, because they're all different, but they all kind of came from the same idea.
They're a family of quilts. We're all a bit different in our family, but all sort of the same. So
So Charisma, I know we're going to jump on this a little bit later, but that really begs the question: when do you know that design is finished?
Right. I know that's the problem. I mean, I have some that are not finished, but has probably sparked 20 different designs, right? So, and as a pattern designer, when we were just playing in our quilt room with those blocks, right? We all do it sort of that improv thing. We would be satisfied with it. We'd sew it together, we'd quilt it, and we'd have a quilt done. And you don't have to worry about anybody going behind you to make that, right? But as pattern designers, we have to think about every step of that process, because there's someone coming behind us to make it. So how many pieces of that red fabric were in there? How many pieces of that white fabric are they going to be able to sew that together? So if we have a bunch of inseams and, you know, all of these different things, is that even approachable? So we have to think about that end product. Whereas when we were sitting on our design wall just playing with those blocks, we didn't have to think about any of those things. And so that is also a contributing factor when we are designing patterns. So Jen, what's a little bit of your process of
your inspiration?
Well, you know, I think I actually thought of you, Charisma, the other day, because I finally hit almost like 50 of the small blocks getting released. And so I was like, well, I'm like, you know, a 10th on my way to being Charisma. It was a moment, you know, for me, you know, almost all the patterns I release, I'm pretty specific to, I don't want to call it on brand, but I try to keep them all very faith-based. And so, you know, in the beginning, I went more for large pattern design, more traditional piecing, but I personally have fallen in love with foundation paper piecing. I think the designs let you be limitless with your creativity. It's almost like you can create pure art, and because you can make any shape you want. From an inspiration perspective, I get too much inspiration because I'll be at mass on the weekend and our priest will say something and I'm like, oh my gosh, that would like make this quilt look amazing. And that's really what I'm thinking about when I'm supposed to be, you know, sitting there quietly praying as I'm now designing a block.
Been there, done that.
Yes.
Do we call that divinely inspired?
Yes, I'm divinely inspired. And, you know, I used to stress about it because I used to be like, oh my gosh, I finished this one. What am I going to do next? And I think for me, again, coming from a faith background, I just feel like as soon as I finish, I feel like God just has this inbox of work for me, and he'll be like, okay, here's the next one I want you to do. And so, I don't worry about it anymore. Terry, how about you?
When I started designing patterns, I started designing for AccuQuilt, and with AccuQuilt, I have about little over 100 patterns in their free library. And when I started, my husband said to him, "Why are you going to give them all of your ideas?" I said, because if I don't get these ideas out of my head's going to explode. So just let me get them out. Because once you get one out, it's like mushrooms. There's going to come 7 more where you took the one out. So I don't know if my brain is just odd or if that's normal for creative people, but that's how mine works.
I think that's really normal for a creator.
Because creativity builds on creativity, right?
Exactly. You know, you take one out and it's like, okay, I've done that. Now let's see what's the next thing we can do. You know, I find it easiest to design like from a particular collection. Let's just say, you know, that's how I started my pattern design is, you know, here's the fabric collection. What can you come up with that? And
So you do better with a bit of restriction.
Yes, I kind of like restrictions. Yeah, that would be a good way to say it. But I don't know, they just keep coming, so stay aware because there's more coming out of there.
Okay, and what about you?
Well, I'm a bit all over the place with my inspiration. I'm a fabric store owner, so a collection will be something that inspires me. I get obviously to see the collections that coming out, you know, 6, 8, 12 months in advance. So, you know, I get to see those. And there are some collections that it's like, bang, idea. And I'm a bit of a pen and paper person first. I like to sketch it out and sort of go, oh gosh, that's not going to work at all. Try again. But then I use EQ8 software. And that really helps then obviously to get it looking a bit more professional, and you can start working out what does and doesn't go together and things.
And so you can do that stuff like Charisma was saying, where you can drop the colors and change.
Oh, exactly.
The design.
And the beauty of EQ8 is that you can import fabric. So if you've got the digital swatches, you can import the fabric for that collection so that you can actually see what it's going to look like even before the fabric's been printed. So
you get really spoiled that way, because I don't think I can even piece a quilt anymore if I don't put it in EQ8 first.
bit like that. But I also, I usually love sort of that Christmas to New Year period where, you know, all the family things have happened and you're just in that twilight zone of not knowing what day of the week or whatever, and you're sitting and relaxing, you're reading a book and whatever. And that is when my creativity just goes nuts. And I can suddenly come up with, you know, 50 different blocks and lots of different quilt patterns, and I just want to get sewing. But you know, you've got to design it out first, because as Charisma said, you're thinking that's going to be a pattern. You've got to think about it in a bit of a more structured way. You need to be able to explain whatever a bit it is that you're doing to another person who may not be at the same skill level that you are. So that can slow me down a bit, unfortunately. But yeah, that's sort of my two main inspiration times, I suppose. I love things like having a prompt. You mentioned that, Rayleigh, that having some restriction is actually good. So fabric collection can be a restriction, or you could give yourself a color palette that's a restriction, or a theme, be it a season, you know, any of those sort of things. Just
that's like a magazine work. I loved magazine works because they give you a prompt, you know, and so then you're like challenged to work within that prompt. So that's a really good thing.
And it's easier when you've got things a bit more restricted than just going, oh, just make a pattern, and you sit there going, the whole world, you know, it's like,
what do I need to,
the world.
Having a goal.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what about you?
I have, probably much the same. I do respond to a theme or a prompt. I agree with Charisma, you know, remembering to write down the steps that we do for someone who may not be the same skill set, or even just because there might be a particular way that the piecing works best. So knowing that and writing it down so that someone else can easily make it without getting frustrated with the pattern, because we all know what that's like. And, you know, we don't want that for the people who are making our patterns. No. So we're trying to make it easy, giving them, you know, if you need to cut 148, you know, squares, whatever, then, you know, giving them the right estimate for fabric requirements and stuff like that is important. But if you haven't taken note of that in your, you know, testing process, that can be a little bit of an issue. And I know the software can actually do a bit of a guesstimate on that as well. But I guess, you know, having done it, you can confirm that, which is always handy. I mean, Jen, your patterns, depending on the size of the pieces, are good for little bits, because you don't always, you know, some of them are quite tiny pieces. Apart from that, I'm very partial to seasonal stuff. I know a lot of our patterns are Christmas inspired. Have a bit of a thing for Christmas. I decorate my house quite well at Christmas time, and seasonal. I seem to quite like those sorts of things. One day I hope to have something seasonal for like every month that I could, you know, decorate my house with at the beginning of the month to enjoy. I do like a bit of change, so the fact that it only lasts a month is going to be ideal. Anyway, it's a work in progress.
Well, that's your challenge. That's
of that, like what you put out. Is that the same? Are those the same sort of designs, the ones that you particularly publish yourself? Are they the same ones that you are also gravitated towards when you like go buy somebody else's patterns? Do you gravitate towards the same things that you put out? Yes
and no, because sometimes I like where someone else's brain has delved into a particular project. So I've actually committed to doing a bit of my own sewing this year, and so I have got a couple of projects on the go that are someone else's design, and you know, are they something that I would have designed? No, but I really like that as well. So no, I'm not restricted to what my choices might be, but you know, I do like other people's stuff.
So for me, I'll say that I design so specifically because of the way that I work. So I work with fabric companies and a lot of stuff. So I'm like really like production all of the time. So then when I make a pattern, like I tend to gravitate towards somebody else's that maybe is scrappy in nature, because I don't get to do a lot of that, and I love scrap quilts, and I also love quilts with negative space, and I love that because I love quilts with negative space. So and I found that when I designed quilts with a bunch of negative space, they didn't sell as well for me unless I quilt them with an all over edge to edge design, because when I fill it with a bunch of fancy quilting, then they'll say like, I can't quilt it like that. So then they don't come by the pattern. So
I have to admit, I do go towards doing projects, even other people's designs in solids, so that I can do some fancy quilting on it.
Yeah, I love
it. Sorry, Anna, I've cut you off there.
Oh no, I can't remember what I was going to say. I mean, I've got so many works in progress at the moment, and they're mostly other people's passions. And I love a really good graphic sort of modern sort of style pattern that catches your eye, and it's something a bit different. But I've got to say, I change them. So even when I'm doing somebody else's pattern, I rarely stick to it. It's always like, oh, no, that block needs to be a bit bigger, or there needs to be something over here. And no, I'm not going to do those borders. I'm going to do something different. I can't stop myself. So,
and I love that. I want to add, so it's funny because to come at that from a pattern designer's perspective, I will sometimes create a pattern. Like, for example, I mean, I don't have a visual to show you, but for this Women of the Bible quilt, we've got our second month one out there. And I thought it did a pretty decent job. Obviously, I thought it was okay enough because we released that pattern. We released that block of this woman. And then one of the participants in there did it, and she changed, even though it was paper pieced, she flipped some colors around. And you guys, it's like it completely transformed. And I actually went through and I picked mine apart and I redid it the way she did hers, because it literally was like, it was better. It was like she took what I had. And I would never have thought to do that. And she just made it, wow. And I think it's really cool when people do take something you've created and, you know, not only make
it their own,
even make it better.
Well, I always say in classes, you know, because sometimes people will apologize and say, well, I'm sorry, I had to change this, or I used these colors, or I'm like, why are you apologizing? For one thing,
go for it.
Yes, it's your quilt. Like, you need to be happy with it at the end of the day. But above that, like, I love it when my stuff is just a jumping off point, and it gets your creative juices going, so that you know, like, I inspired you in some way. It doesn't matter, even if it's just like one little thing. It's good for you to like, oh, I saw this from this or whatever, and I love that, because that's what we do, right? Anne said, I change almost every pattern. We were the same thing, you know, like, so don't apologize. Like, I think that I inspired you. So
yeah.
What about you, Carrie? What kind of patterns do you gravitate towards?
I'm going to gravitate towards, like a collage type deal, you know, where you, because my other love, if I had like, you know, 57 hours in a day, I would do like mixed media, junk journaling, you know, scrapbooking type things, you know, because I like getting my fingers dirty in paint. I like, you know, stamping things, making things look kind of grungy. But that's kind of hard to translate into block quilts. You know, it's really hard to translate that. But that's where my love is. Or Bible journaling. I've done a lot of that, you know, that artsy Bible journaling thing. So yeah, I think, but once I've maybe gotten one of those collage ones out of my system, it really invigorates me to, you know, get back to work. So I think it's necessary to do something outside of your work quilting, because basically I don't do any piecing other than work piecing, unless I'm at a retreat or something, you know. So yeah, I just think it's important to go outside of your normal sometimes, to stretch your imagination and to stretch your creativity. So
I think that's, you know, one of those topics, then we probably should discuss this on one of our lives, is burnout, because that's a technique that I'll use when I do feel burnout, because I'm constantly go, go, go. And, you know, I'll have this stack of 20 quilts and I I don't want to do those because those have deadlines or they have something else. And if I do just some small project, I mean, it could be a jelly roll quilt, it could be anything, but just something that I can just do mindless sewing or be creative. Like if I can do an improv scrappy thing, then I feel like I'm more prepared to like tackle the other stuff that I have to do. So having just a little bit of creative time to myself helps with that. So
that's what Anne was saying earlier.
Yeah, the Christmas New Year, you're doing something different. You're not at this level. You're sort of just at this level. You're doing something fun. And I usually do something like a little zippy pouch or something that you could do in a half a day or a day. But it's great and it's got something and it's finished. I love having things finished.
Yeah.
Because then you go,
it's good.
I get back into
bags would be the other thing. Yeah, like you say, the zippy pouches. Yep.
Yeah, just something little and finishing. But then you sort of get that little bit more momentum to get back to the 96 projects that are work related and get through them. Because you've reminded yourself too of what a finish is like. You forget that sometimes because you just got so many projects going and things. But when we get one finished, it's lovely. It's lovely to get a finish and to be able to go, look what I did.
That's the dopamine rush.
Yes, a finish that we get to keep. Because like I do finish, but then it goes here, there, wherever. Yeah.
And you don't see it again for another 4 years. Yeah.
I want to go back to Charisma, what you were saying about you've got your family of designs.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all a little bit of a different iteration. How do you know which one you're going to publish? How do you know that design is done?
Well,
what's that look like?
I think it's just like my intuition, I guess. Like I just like, oh, I love it right now. That if I feel like I don't have to tweak it anymore, like because you'll be in that software and you'll be like changing this. No, I don't like that. Put it back. Oh, I don't like this. Put it back. No, that's good. Or like sometimes you're just there and you're like, oh, I just love that so much. I don't want to change one thing. Then you know, like, okay, here it is. But I like this, but then I do like this one equally as well. Which one do I want to make the best? I better make them both. You know, like that.
Do you ever, Charisma, just let it sit for a day or a night or a week where you sort of go, oh, look, I quite like that. Yeah, I think that's the one. Go away for a couple of days, do other bits of work, some quilting in your come back and then go, no.
So there's a few things. I have a few different processes going on, right? Because I will actually go. I know this is probably going to be unbelievable to some of you, but there'll be times throughout the year where my brain is so fried I can't design a thing. But in those times where I do have like that design fever, like I go through and I'll design, and things will just be flowing out. And I save all of those designs and then I put them in my laptop. And then throughout the rest of the year, I'll be going through those lines will be coming my way and I'll be like, hey, I remember that one. This would go well with that one design that I did here. But hey, I'm probably going to have to change this because the theme doesn't match or, you know, whatever. Or I'm going to have to add a color, take a few colors out, however it works out. And then it's like, oh, this is what this was the design that was supposed to belong here, you know, like, and so some of those sort of marriages happen that way. So I just have files and files and files of designs. I mean, there's so many, like I started naming them block of the month 56, jelly roll quilt 77, you know, fat quilt. I can't just like name them all, right? So
actually that comes to a next point of how do you pick your names for your quilts?
Because now I have so many, I'm forgetting what things I have named. So I have like a group of friends that I'm like, hey, what comes to mind when you see this? And then I'll get a load of stuff. Nope, I've already used those 5. I can't use that. Something else. So then something might burn. Like, so right now I designed a quilt that hasn't been released yet called Abundance, but it's a sampler quilt and it has all these different things. And it just, you know, I love some words and that just seemed, you know, I was feeling grateful at the moment. I have all this abundance.
Sounds like there's a lot in that quilt.
Yes. And so you know, so I'm like, okay, that quilt's getting that name because it just was coincidence, or, you know, however you want to call it, that word came to me while I was looking at, hey, that's a great name for this quilt. So, you know, from all over. I mean,
Yeah.
really. I mean, I have a whole line of patterns just based off of dessert names because easy, right?
Oh, now that could be a good inspiration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I literally, wherever I can find names, I will use them. So how do you guys come up
Terry,
with
Terry,
names?
do you have some way of naming your quilt patterns or your block patterns?
Usually they have to go back to the inspiration, that came from the quilt. I'd probably do, I'm going to say 20 a year, so, and in my patterns, I'll always have a quote that goes with the title, and that I feel goes with the quilt. And then there's also a Bible verse so I want them all to flow together. So when when I have the quilt designed and then I'm thinking about the pattern, I'm thinking, okay, first of all, what kind of fabric is it? Is it a themed fabric or is it just colors? Um, and what is the theme of my collection that I'm working with? Is it, does it have garden themes, or what's the themes? I'm working with one now that is red, white, and blue. So obviously, that has, some patriotic themes to it. So then that's an easy one to find the names. But in general, I guess I want my names to have a feeling that I want the quilt to have, if that makes sense, there's a
Brings
new
in a
one.
whole nother aspect, so doesn't it?
Exactly, because that's what I want my quilts to be. I'm not just, just making a whole bunch of them. I want my quilts to have a purpose. I mean,
Yeah.
that they all flow together. There's one that I designed right before my breast cancer, and it was baskets. And when I designed it, it was just like, oh, it's cute baskets. But when it came time to name it, I had, come through some recovery, and it was like, no, those are blessing baskets, because
Yeah.
of what I can now put in those baskets, So I kind of like to have underlying messages, meanings, thoughts
Lovely.
behind my names. So that's how I work it.
I do that for some of my favorite designs too, because some of my stuff is just very commercial work. So, I'm just
Yes.
trying to get through. But I also, some of my very favorite ones are going to have names like Live Boldly, obviously, like anybody who knows me probably knows that one. And Live Boldly because, I came from horrific circumstances and going through that, unlearning so many things, and then like claiming myself and figuring that all out. And, when we are marinating in this stuff for so long, like from the time that we've designed something till the time that it's made, we spend a lot of time with it,
Yeah.
So to have those like reminders as we're designing it and putting it out to the world, sometimes they need to have those meaningful names. And
Yep.
as we're thinking about that, it's resonating with us, and we hope that it resonates with everybody else. So
Because I
and
found when I was
hasn't been used by somebody else. That's the
Yeah.
hardest thing, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
So
think,
I
oh,
just want to say hi
fabulous
to
name,
Lynn.
and it's like, no.
I want to say hi to Lynn and Carl for joining us today. Yes.
Cool.
Okay. So, if we're going back to how do we like execute a design? Like we've decided that this design is good enough to be a pattern, or, how do we go about executing that design and getting that process going?
I'll go. So I do. So my designs are very different than like your quilt blocks. Which is why like it's really easy for me to name them, because like Daniel the Lion's Den, because it's a lion. Like they're very literal interpretations. But I always start off my designs. I use Procreate, and it's that app in like an iPad where you can actually just draw. I always sketch things out in there, and I love it so much more than just using paper. I put everything into EQ, whether I'm going to, make it a formal design or not. But I always start off in Procreate because it gives me the chance to like quickly erase or quickly change things. And I also love if I want to reference, like now for the women of the Bible, like what did they look like? Where were they from? So like everything is just right there, and I can be with my family. So everything for me usually starts, I start in Procreate, and then I move to EQ8. And then from there, I spit it out and then just try to design as best, or I try to sew as best I can on my own.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So do you write it first and then sew your sample, or do you sew your sample and then write it?
Oh, I see what you mean. I always sew as I write, unless it's paper pieced. In that case, I'll write it first. And then like I kind of count myself as the first tester of that paper pieced pattern before I have it that better tested than just me doing it.
Yeah.
Because if I try to do it the other way around, I found I give too messy of a paper pieced pattern to my testers, and then they have trouble following it. And it ends up being needless work. So I always try to follow my own directions first. How about you guys?
I've done it all different ways, but if I have the time and the luxury, I will do it in paper, put it in EQ8, and then I will probably make it, or at least if it's a block kind of one, at least one block, so that it, you know, I'm a touch and feel. I want to see it. I want to see what it looks like. And you pick up so many little tips and tricks as you're doing that. And I put those into my pattern. So then I will write the pattern and I will then make from the pattern. And so you're actually reading the pattern, cutting to the pattern, not what you think should be there or whatever. Literally, it's like proofreading. You've really got to concentrate and do from the pattern. And if it's a complex quilt, I will get it pattern tested. I haven't made a particularly complex one for a little while, so I've just been doing that too. So you make, you write, and then you make it from what you've written specifically.
You know, I wanted to add real quick too. One thing that I always try to do, it's a habit that I need to get into, because I've made this mistake actually on one of my earlier patterns I released, was the fabric requirements. Even if I'm working from my stash, I now cut my fabric to those requirements before I start making my quilt. Yes. Because too many times I've best guesstimated how much you need, and it has not worked out. So
well, it's hard with paper pieced ones too. To, you know, the better paper piecer you are, the less sort of fabric you need. But when I'm doing a paper piece one, I overestimate the fabric, and you know, it's cut a square this big for a piece that's going to be that big, so that people don't finish it and go, oh, it doesn't cover it, and you know, they get very unhappy. So yeah.
Okay, what about you, Lily?
Well, which question were we answering? How do I design?
How do you execute your design? So like after you kind of design it and decide to put it into pattern form, like what is your process?
What's my process? I probably make it, write the pattern from it. So I'm probably very similar to Anne. I will probably try and make notes throughout the making process though. And I have to admit, a lot of our patterns have been tested by my partner in crime, who is my mum. And so it's a bit of a challenge, because she gets into it and then forgets to write the notes, because, you know, you're on a roll. You just, and I said, so was there enough fabric? And she's like, oh, I didn't take notice of that. I'm like, oh, darn it. So there could be a few prototypes before we get it done. I must admit, though, I think we are fairly accurate with our fabric allowances. There are probably, I probably make it, write the pattern from the notes and from the actual piece, and then sometimes I make it again. Sometimes I just go through and mentally do the maths. So most of the time there's more than one made. Other times there's one and a lot of thinking.
Yeah.
Hopefully that still works. I'm sure people will tell me if there's a problem.
Yes.
One other thing I do too is, before I determine that it's going to be a pattern, I also work out whether or not I'm going to do a sew along for it. Because if I'm going to do a sew along for it, when I am doing that second make, you know, the one that I'm making from the pattern, I will take photos, I will do videos, I'll do reels, I'll write out the things that I'm going to do for the sew along, so that by the time
break it up into the sections,
pattern release comes, I can announce a sew along. I've got a lot of the hard work done for a sew along already. And, you know, makes my life a little bit easier than going, oh, I'm going to do a sew along. Oh, I didn't take any photos, videos, didn't do anything. Oh my gosh.
That's very wise, Anne. Very wise.
So Terry, what is your process?
I will design it first in EQ, then I figure out all of the parts. So I need, you know, 3 strips, 2.5 inches wide, and I don't like write it out, you know, word for word, but I have all of my steps and what piece, how many and what size pieces I need, and then I go cut out the quilt, piece it, or cut it out and piece it according to the notes that I made, and then take note of which way, you know, you need to press and if I have pieces left, it's like, oh shoot, what did I do wrong?
Oops.
You know, or if I have to recut because I didn't have enough pieces, then I know that, okay, you know, there's something wrong in my calculation. So it's like I'm testing myself from my pattern notes. And from there, then I'll go and write the pattern, and voila, there you are.
So I have a little bit different process. I design it. I hand the file to my tech writer. She writes the pattern, and then I test the sample while I test the pattern while I'm making the sample. So, or one of my sample makers does.
Mm-hmm.
So it used to be that I would make the sample, I would design it, make the sample, and then hand her the file. But then I had to rely on pattern testers, and, you know, that just didn't work out because everybody does things sort of differently. So I needed to come up with a different way. And so that's how we do it. Because I don't write the pattern, so I'm not that close to it. So I can still test it while I'm making the sample and test all the math and whatever else. But I did get caught on that yardage thing that Jen is talking about, because when Rob Appel and I did Fabulous, we both were just working from yardage. We didn't like check the yardage requirements.
Because you didn't have to. Yeah.
We made the quilt. We did all of the videos. We each made a sample. And then the very first month when we released that first video, we had a mistake in month 4. And so we had to go back, and he had to like re-edit that video and add a little thing. And then we had enough, thank God, for all the kits that had pre-sold and everything. The mistake wasn't so big that it, you know, but it was like a lesson. Okay, now we all need to cut the yardage because we were in such a hurry. We were like, so that was something that stuck out, and especially a block of the month. You know, you go to all that work, and then
I was just going to add, one thing I've started to do is if I find it's a pattern where it's close on yardage, I've started putting a cutting guide in just for those yards that are close. Like if it's one like I've rounded up a little bit, or you can tell you can make a couple mistakes, but there's others where it's like, I don't want to just add on this extra because you really don't need it. But if it's not there, like you cannot screw up in your cutting. So it's always like, you know, cut things first and then this. And so I will sometimes put a cutting guide in the back for just those fabrics that are very specific. And again, this is more for traditional piecing because it's to your point. I think, Anne, you said it, like it's pretty much impossible. I mean, not impossible, but it's close to impossible for me to give you fabric allotments for paper piecing because everybody does it so differently.
In a different way, I had to do that then for one of my recent patterns where I was using a half-yard bundle. And, of course, a half yard is a different size to a half meter, which is what we sell fabric in Australia. But you buy a pre-cut of a half yard bundle, and it was tight, like really tight. So I had to give cutting instructions, and I actually did a whole video on how to make it work.
But that pattern, Anne, was also because the fabric was an ombre style. Yes. So you had that complication in there as well.
Exactly.
So it wasn't quite as straightforward as just
having a go and cutting here.
I'll do it with some fat quarter designs too, because if you need multiple sizes, sometimes they need to have, you know, that all laid out. This is how it's going to work. So, you know,
cut this one first, then that one, then that one. Yeah. I think from an Australian perspective, that's perhaps one of the more difficult things of fabric requirements of going, oh, well, you know, you can do that in a half meter. Oh, but you can't do it in a half yard. So you've got to. this constant having to put 2 lots of measurements of fabric requirements in and things like that. So, small whinge from an Australian.
They have
Sorry.
to make everything so difficult.
You could just go to metric. It'd be easier.
The rest of the world, yeah, but Americans, here we are. Miles, inches, and whatever.
Out of our designs, Charisma, do you have a favorite? I know you talked about the Live Boldly, and I've put that in the chat. Is that your favorite design of all of your designs? And can you actually choose one? And that question goes for everybody.
Well, so none of my
your favorite child.
I know. I'm sorry.
I do have a design that is my favorite, but it's not a published design. And it was a quilt I made several years ago. And it is my own design, but I never published it. But I did share it. And what it was a quilt. It's this queen size quilt. And I hand stitched all of these different quotes and dates and significant songs and scriptures. And I started this idea, and I was just adding different bits of fabric, and all of this is very like just tone on tones and very sort of simple. But the other thing that happened during this time, because words are very important to me, because as a kid growing up, I didn't have a lot of stuff, I would say, and I just sort of memorized different things, and so quotes and different things just sort of resonated with me. And so I just kind of wanted to get some of those things out, and special little things. And my grandmother got sick, and I had to spend several days. I'd drive over and take care of her and take care of her house, and I would stitch those next to her hospital bed. So then it had this other So if the house caught on fire, that's the one quilt that I would go in and get. That's my favorite quilt. So I've showed pictures of it online, but it's absolutely ginormous, but the most meaningful. And that's my favorite design.
That's pretty special.
Yeah, very.
Gosh. All right. The rest of us, it's a bit more of a challenge to follow up on that.
Yeah. I'm just going to go because, as in, go next with that, because I literally have to leave very soon. I've got to catch a flight from Adelaide back to Melbourne. So favorite is really hard, but I was just quickly scrolling through my pattern list, and my charm framed pattern, I did a year of different jelly roll kind of quilts, and the charm framed one, which I'll just see if you can see it on my phone. Might be a bit tough, but
yes,
it's got a lovely secondary designs, and I did it in ombre fabric. That was the first time I'd used ombre fabric, and I fell in love with ombre fabric, and some of my next patterns have done it. So it's kind of I felt like it was my first real grown-up pattern. Had this secondary design. It was like that's like a real pattern designer kind of thing. So that was sort of, I think that's probably mine for the moment. I mean, I love all my quilts, and there are some that are my all-time favorites, as in I snuggle with them on the couch and all that sort of stuff. But I think from a pattern designing perspective, that's my favorite. So
I think once we're offline and you've got a moment, so, and obviously not while you're in the air, but later on you can maybe put the link to that in the chat there, and then everyone can sort of find that if they're interested. Jen, what about you?
I'm just going to have to go, guys. It was lovely chatting to everybody, and enjoying the live video. We'll chat to you later. Bye.
See you next time.
It is. Oh, we all just moved directions.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
It's a very hard question, and I don't want to get picked for this to answer it, because I don't know if I have a favorite. What's interesting is I guess, I liked really how you were talking about, I think if there's a fire, Charisma. I think Charisma. I guess the quilt I would grab is not one I made. Is that an okay answer? Does it have to be one of my patterns? So, obviously I like my patterns. I made them, and I thought they were cute enough to publish. I love the
good criteria,
right? I mean, I don't publish the ugly ones, but I like the Jessie tree one. That's special to me, really, because you quilted it, and so like every time
that was a heap of fun,
and that's really special to me, because we were kind of like you partnered with me on that, and so that was really cool. But my favorite quilt as a whole that I have is actually this one. I used to race a lot. I did a lot of triathlon and road cycling. And I had a t-shirt quilt made for me from a friend. And it's the first quilt I ever really saw or that I interacted with. You know, we never had quilts growing up. It wasn't a thing. I didn't know anybody who quilted. It was just like this. I knew what it was, but it was the first one that was ever made. And so it was the first time I can appreciate the craftsmanship behind it. And then it had so many personal meanings and special things. And so, you know, I loved how Charisma House said, gee, if there was a fire, I would let mine burn, but I'd probably grab that one just because it's so special to me.
Yeah.
So your challenge, Jen, later is to find and maybe put a link in of a pattern that you're really proud of your own. Okay.
I know I like cheated on your question. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's a good answer. Terry, what about you?
Oh boy, that's a tough one.
Maybe go with the question of, you know, what's a pattern of yours that you're really proud of?
Right. I'm proud. I don't know if I would grab it in a fire, but I'm proud of my very first one because it was just the first one I did, you know. So I'm proud of that one. Otherwise, I don't know. I just make the quilt, you know, I just make them and put them out in the world and see what happens. Basically. But the ones that are coming up, there's going to be some new ones coming up in September. And I would probably grab those in a fire because they have a really good story behind them. They're going to be the first patterns that I have that were designed with the fabric that I designed. So there's
That's
just
pretty
some
special.
there's some really good stories connected to these patterns. And I would probably grab those in a fire. But right now, I don't have any of my patterns that I would grab in a fire. I have similar, you know, emotional, very connected, sentimental quilts I would, but yeah. Oh, either my first pattern, which was called Tangled Twigs, or the Blessing Basket one, just because that one has, you know, recovery, good thoughts for myself. So, yeah.
I have a question for you guys. Did you ever have the opposite? I mean, well, I guess we got through everybody, right, on that?
No, not really.
Really
That
did.
Well, I agree. It's a hard question. And, you know, I'm looking around my rooms, like, which ones am I really proud of? Yeah, look, there are a few that I really enjoy, but again, it's probably not the ones that I grab. And I love the emotional contact or connection that we have with quilts. So that's a whole nother topic.
Whole nother
that we
topic.
can chat about. I will have a think and put a link to a pattern that I'm really proud of in the chat. But yeah, no, go on with your question, Jen.
No, I was curious, and really, I'll put this one right back to you. Have you ever made something that you thought the world would love, and you put it out there, and it's like,
Oh yeah,
Ricketh?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard because you know, if you're designing this quilt, you're putting, you know, Charisma goes through various iterations before she gets to the ones that are the quilt that gets put out there, the quilt that gets made. You know, we work with our process, and then you put it out there. There's hours of work in the designing and the refining and the making of and all that sort of stuff. And it's almost like it is a baby, and people don't like your baby, and and it's like, oh, that's harsh. You know, I thought it was fantastic, but not everybody does. But you know what? I think it depends on the time. Charisma, you could probably, you know, follow up with that. Is that some of your earlier patterns, do they then have a new life later on? Or did we just do it at the wrong time? And that was one of our vague questions, is about the timing of a release.
So that's a few things. There's a few things with that. One is that, this is just in my experience. One is that I don't think we can ever know what the public is going to like. We just don't. Because so we just have to know that if we like it, love it, whatever, we put it out and hope that it lands well, because something that I will love will fall flat. And then something that I just am putting out there because it's done, all of a sudden goes gangbusters, and you're like, what? Like, this was like, not even on my radar that would be something. Like, I have one that just sells like cakes, and I wasn't even going to put it out, but I already had a sample done, and I thought I'll just put it out there, and it'll be fun, it'll be easy, and wow, bingo bango, I'm like, well, thank God I put that out there. But the other thing that I will do is revamp them. So like I had one that kind of fell flat. I changed the colors, and then I couldn't keep enough kits in. It would sell like crazy. So then when you go through, so like this year, I'm like kind of going through and maybe I'm adding some sizes to some of my older patterns to kind of give them more life, or I am changing the colors, updating them to something either with a print line or like maybe some colors that are more in style now than they were 5 years ago. That doesn't seem like it should be right, but it is. And then all of a sudden everyone thinks that they're looking at a new pattern, but I didn't have to do that much work to give it a little bit of more value and to see if I could get something going with it. And it almost always does give it a boost. So I think that's a good thing. And I do think some of it is timing. There's some stuff that you put out now and it's like nobody's looking at it, but then when they see it in a new colorway or whatever, or maybe like the right person caught it, shared it, and then all of a sudden, you have a whole crowd that's like, hey, I've never seen this pattern before. Like, I didn't think that anybody hasn't seen Live Boldly, but then somebody shared it a couple weeks ago, and then I get all these like ding, 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 and it just happens. So I think there's just a whole lot of timing, colors. You just never know. You can't predict. So I say put it out there if it makes you happy, because if it makes you happy, it's a genuine thing and it's going to find its place in the world. That's kind of
very good advice.
Yeah. So we are we at an hour, guys? Almost.
We
well,
are.
we're at a little bit of a late start. I'm technology challenged.
We love you anyway.
Yes. No. We can't all be good.
Thank God.
You can't publish 500 patterns and be good in IT.
Yes, I love that you've got a tech editor and someone who's writing all that. That would be ideal.
Yes. So
take my ideas, make them into, because then we could all be like Terry and have the ideas all flowing without actually having to action them fully. We just keep coming and hand them over. Yeah.
Well, I feel it working in my strengths, right? So why am I going to if this is something that I'm good at, why let a hiccup get in my way? That's just really going to slow me down. But it's also helped me. I've provided a job for somebody else. And so now she has a few other clients. She works with them and she has more work than she wants between, the couple of us that she works for. So, I feel like that's even a blessing to be able to provide a job for someone else. So, because then we all get to work at home and work in something that we like. And
the rest of us get to enjoy your patterns.
Yeah. Thank you. So, what we've decided that we're going to have another meeting next month. Did we say the 15th?
We did.
Okay.
Which is the 16th in Australia.
Okay. So Saturday the 15th, we'll have another meeting with my pattern designer friends, and we'll post links to our either favorite quilt, one that we're proud of, something like that in the description box.
How about the ones we're not proud of too? Should we share those?
No, we'll leave that to everyone to go searching through our websites. And maybe suggest.
We're not doing that we don't judge real things, we don't want to share the bad ones. Yeah. So it's all just happy stuff. Yes. So.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Lovely.
All right. So we'll see you next month. And any wrapping questions? Anything from anybody?
No, I think we're good. We will all share where it's going to be.
Yes.
Oh, that's that clever thing. Can I do that? No, don't know why that one doesn't work on me. Anyway, we will.
I get a little.
Maybe it's because you're on the device you're on. Bye, Lynn. And we will share where it's going to be because we are rotating through our YouTube channels. So I advise you to jump on and follow everybody that's here on YouTube, as so they'll Charisma will hopefully be able to just put a list of those in the description when this is fully uploaded. So follow us and you'll find out where it's going to be next. It will be the 15th or the 16th, depending on where you are located. And we will share about what that topic will be later on.
All right.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you for hosting, Charisma.
Yes. Thanks, ladies.
See you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.